Okay, so Ayin Aleph, I'm at Bais. It's 6 lines down from the top. Kaitzel Shachas and Michael Behema. Talking about before the Omer is brought, which is on the 16th of Nisan, but you weren't allowed to eat the new grain. Nevertheless, you were allowed to harvest certain things. One of those things is shachas, is fodder, and you can feed it to your animal. So the Gemara says, Tanan Hasam. It was taught over there in Peah. Ve'elu mafsikin lepeah. Normally, Peah is the corner of a field. You leave it for the poor. How much is Peah? There's a Eily dvarim shein lem shiur, but there still is some sort of measurement. I forget if it's how much you're supposed to give. It says a measurement, even though it's Eily dvarim shein lem shiur. Right. But there's still a certain amount that's supposed to be left, and it's per field. So the problem is that let's say there's a field that could be divided. There's like this. It's a large field that maybe has a separation in the middle. You have to leave one payah or 2 payahs. What is considered a division between the field? So hanachal. First one is if there is a stream. Actually, a nachal doesn't have to be a stream. It could be just like a valley of a thing. Shlulis is some sort of reservoir where the rainwater collects. B'derech hayachid, if there is a path which is 4 amas. It means that it's not for the public, but nevertheless it's a path that goes through B'derech harabim, or if there's a large path, if it's 16 amas. That's for sure. Yeah, you're asking why does I have to say it if it's derech hayachid. It's a good question. That's a good question. You hear the question? Why does it have to say derech harabim if it says derech hayachid? Let's see if he says something. Ches. Yushalmi asked the question. Like Kal v'chaymer. The Rashbam says it the opposite. The Rashbam's gear says derech harabim and derech hayachid.
That makes sense. But no, even so, even that doesn't explain anything.
No, because we do work our way down. We would say this, not only that, but even this. It could be because there are other differences between derech hayachid and derech harabim in other categories, and we just list them all here.
It says here it's fine. Finds it necessary to state both on account of the mission of Peah 2:3 that teaches these separations do not serve to divide an orchard.
So it wants to tell us even that. Okay. Ushvil harabim, ushvil hayachid. And these are paths of the rabbim and paths of the yachid. But these, if it's a path, if it's not really, shvil is narrower than a derech. If it's not always used, then it's not going to be mafsik. It needs to be hakavua, be maisacham and maisach. It needs to be a path that's always used. Did you live in Monsey? No. For us, we don't really have paths between the streets and all of that. But in Monsey, the way the city was very few houses originally, 50 years ago, and the streets were like a lot of dead ends. You would walk through a lot of paths to get to anywhere you wanted, to get to a shul. I remember walking through 2 people's backyards. They actually put up fences to get through their backyards because everyone was cutting through anyway. They were just you stay over there. So they made paths for people to get through. Now it's built up, and I don't know what they did with the streets, but there were no sidewalks, and we would walk through people's backyards. So what we're saying here is that would divide the field if there was a path like that, and you would have to leave 2 payahs. V'habar, if there was this is a bar is not a pit. A bar is a stay bar. That's it's laid fallow. V'hanir, as if it was plowed. V'zera acher, or if there was another crop that was there, which was remember from school George Washington Carver. Remember that? He said we should plant. Remember this? Legumes, alternate soybean to alternate the crops is supposed to be good for the soil, for the nitrogen. So you could put in between the crops, in between the wheat, they would put in, let's say, some sort of beans in the middle. So b'kaitzel l'shachas mafsik, or if you harvest it for fodder. That means that you have two fields. You have one big field, okay? And the middle, you cut straight down the middle for fodder. So you have all this grain is growing tall, and in the middle you have it it's already harvested, or a row or two of harvest. So Divrei Reb Meir. That's the opinion of Reb Meir. The Chacham say that it doesn't divide the field unless you actually plowed it over, just to cut the grain down there so it doesn't look equal. That's not enough. It would have to be plowed over. Now, what we're seeing here is that if I start harvesting, let's say, if I'm starting to harvest, let's say even if I do it in a strange way, even if I harvest down the middle, and I'm going to continue harvesting, it doesn't like divide the field in half. It's the beginning of my harvest. It's not dividing the field. So what would be dividing the field is if cutting for fodder is not considered harvesting. It's not considered ktsira. If it's considered harvesting, then it's all one field and I started to harvest. But if it's not considered ktsira, then I have two fields here, and this is not part of the harvest. The fact that it's so. The fact that Reb Meir says that koitzel l'shachas is mafsik, that means that that's not considered harvesting. If it's not considered harvesting, so then that would make sense why you're allowed to cut l'shachas before the omer, because you're not allowed to harvest, but this is not harvesting. So we have this interesting comparison between cutting before the omer and what divides the field for peah. And we're using the term, is it considered harvesting, to tell me by both of them. So since by peah it's not considered harvesting, why? Because it divides the field. So therefore that would make sense why you're allowed to cut it before the omer. Now the Chachamim, they say that it is harvesting. So that's why it wouldn't fit with the Chachamim that you can cut l'shachas.
But they don't argue on that point. They just argue it has to be
charash. But
charash.
if you just did the kaitzel l'shachas, that would be considered harvesting, and you just started harvesting. It doesn't divide your fields in half. But if you were to plow it, then that would be considered dividing. You need something else to consider to make it dividing. Amar Rabbi Bar Bachana, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Bar Bachana says in the name of his teacher, Rabbi Yechanan, Reb Meir b'shitas Reb Shimon Amra. Reb Meir goes according to the opinion of his friend Reb Shimon. Reb Meir and Reb Shimon are friends. The Amar that he says, Yiktzer v'yoichel v'yachel af mishay v'yashlesh. If you go back to the Mishnah, you can turn a page back. The Mishnah had a Tanakama here. Tanakama says, Kaitzel l'shachas amaychel behema. That's what we're quoting. It says the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, when are you allowed to do this? That's only if you started cutting it before it reached the shlish, before it reached a third of its growth. And Reb Shimon argues. Reb Shimon says, even if it's a shlish of its growth, you're still allowed to harvest. You're still allowed to cut it, even though it's grown so much, and it's already ripe, coming close to being ripe. You're still allowed to harvest it before the omer. So Rabbi Bar Bachana says in the name of Rabbi Yechanan that Reb Meir is being lenient here, even if it already grew a third, like Reb Shimon. Reb Meir doesn't tell me how much it grew when I'm cutting it for fodder. He doesn't say that. Rabbi Bar Bachana says that Reb Meir holds like Reb Shimon, and that adds into one detail, that even if it grew a third, that I wouldn't have known from just reading the Mishnah. So Alma, we see from this, Kasavar, that he holds, Kol Shachas Lav Ktsiri. Anytime that you're cutting for fodder, it's not considered harvesting. Okay. Yosef Rabba. V'ka'amar lo lahashmaitza. Rabba's sitting and he's saying over this halacha. the statement from Rabbi Bar Chana. Eisvei Ravacha Bar Huna l'Rava. Ravacha Bar Huna says to Rava. Rava could have been is a student of Rava. So maybe he turns to his friend, unless the Gersa is wrong, unless it's supposed to be Eisvei Rava or Yosef Rava. Okay, Achla. Here's his question. Achla Chagav, Karsamur Namalim, Shavrata Haruach. The Mishnah also says that if the grasshoppers eat a section of the field, or the worms, grasshoppers eat the top, the worms crawl in on the bottom, right? Yeah, the worms they make it spoil, or if the wind breaks the stalks of grain in one area, so then Hakal Maidim, everyone would agree that Charash Mafsik, Loi Charash Eina Mafsik, that section would not be dividing the fields unless it was plowed.
Intentionally.
Unless it was plowed, yeah. So the fact that there's an area that's missing doesn't divide the fields because of these natural occurrences. Now, Hakal Maidim Man, when it says Hakal, everyone agrees. Who's the everyone? It must be Rabbi Meir, because the Chachamim say anyways that even if you harvested it, it's nothing. You needed to plow it. So everyone agrees means even Rabbi Meir agrees. Now, I have a way of explaining this. Why is Rabbi Meir over here agreeing? Because what does the Mishnah mean? When the Mishnah actually quotes Rabbi Meir, why is it considered that it's not considered harvesting? It divides the field because it didn't grow a third. Not the way Rabbi Bar Chana explained it, that Rabbi Meir holds like Reb Shimon. We'll explain it differently. That Rabbi Meir holds like Rabbi Yehuda. It didn't grow a third. In Bais, in this Brisa that we just quoted from Ravacha Bar Huna quote, that's talking about where it did grow a third, and that's why I need to plow it, because there's a difference between if it grew a third or if it didn't grow a third. If it grew a third already, then that's considered the beginning of harvesting. It was almost ready. It was already a third the way there. And then we can understand why Reb Meir makes a distinction between these two cases. But if I say like you, Rabbi Bar Chana, and the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that the Mishnah is talking about when it grew a third, Hashta now Ma Hasam de Ktsira, over there when you're actually doing harvesting. Amar Reb Meir Loishmei Ktsira, Reb Meir says it's not considered harvesting when there's actually a person going and cutting it. Hachalei Kolshkein, over here for sure should not be considered harvesting. So why does he need to be plowed? If both of them is more than a third, and it's nevertheless not considered harvesting. If you cut it, so why over there when the wind knocks it all over, that's considered harvesting? The wind knocked it over, and the thing. It should be the same halacha. Ella Reb Meir b'shitas Reb Yehuda Amra. Rather, Reb Meir holds like Reb Yehuda. The Amar that Reb Yehuda says in our Mishnah, Eimasai, when do we say that you're allowed to cut it for fodder? Bisman shehischal ad shleihevi shlish. That's only if you began to cut it before it reached the third. Avalim hischal ad shleihevi shlish, then it's asur. But if you started after it reached the third, then it would be forbidden to cut it because that's considered harvesting. Again, we're going back and forth between cutting before the Omer and Peah. But Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, we know what his opinion is by cutting before the Omer, that you're allowed to cut it before it reaches a third. Reb Shimon held you're allowed to cut it even after a third. Reb Meir, we don't know his opinion regarding the Omer. We know his opinion regarding Peah, that if it's cut, we don't know when it's cut. We know that if you harvest it for fodder, it's not considered harvesting. The question is it Rabbi Yehuda's level of which is lower than a third, or is it Reb Shimon's level, which even higher than a third is still not considered harvesting? And we're taking those two opinions from cutting before the Omer. Okay. Now the Gemara has a question. So we said it fits with Rabbi Yehuda, and Reb Meir would hold that when is it considered that the field is divided in half? That's when you harvested it before it was a third. And that's the Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. The problem is, there's one factor here that we left out. Ema d'shamat leila Rabbi Yehuda lebehema. If you look at the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says, the Tanakama says, "Kaitzer l'shachas u'maycha lebehema." You can cut it for fodder for animal food. Comes along Rabbi Yehuda, and he says, when do we say that? That's only if it didn't reach a third. Now, there's two ways of reading Rabbi Yehuda's statement. He doesn't mention anything about an animal. It's possible, theoretically, that Rabbi Yehuda is arguing with the Tanakama and saying that you said you're only allowed to cut it for fodder for an animal, but I say that that's acceptable only if it's less than a third, but I don't say that it's only for an animal. He doesn't mention anything about the animal. He's saying it even for, you can cut it for, even for people, for I don't know what they're going to do with it, but for somehow maybe they can eat it, wheatgrass, whatever they do with it. So,
Make tea.
yeah, is there such a thing?
Yes.
In the olden days, they knew how to use every part of. they had to use everything. Okay, so there's only one problem with that. If we would say that, the problem is that we have a statement in Sanhedrin. We learned it in Pesachim when we had a statement that Rabbi Yehuda's. We have a rule that whenever Rabbi Yehuda says "Emasai," after an opinion of the Tanakama, he's never arguing, he's just explaining, he's just clarifying. That's a rule that the Gemara tells us about Rabbi Yehuda. So, we say like this, Eimar d'shamet lei Rabbi Yehuda lebehema, but l'adam mishamet lei? Does he say that you're allowed to cut it for a human? And according to Reb Meir, Reb Meir would say that even if you're cutting it for human consumption, it's still not considered harvesting. And Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold that. Rabbi Yehuda holds that only for animal it's not considered harvesting. So the imkain, because if you're going to say that he does hold that Rabbi Yehuda holds that you're allowed to cut it for human consumption, havalut klasatanoi. Then you have three opinions in the Mishnah, and we have an emasai, which means that there's only two opinions. Emasai is just clarifying. Ela ki yasser Rav Dimi Amar Rab Meir Beshitas Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Amra. When Rav Dimi came, Rav Dimi was one of the people that traveled back and forth from Eretz Yisrael. He said that Rab Meir actually holds like Rabbi Akiva, his teacher. Right? The 5 students of Rabbi Akiva, we just went through 3 of them. Rab Meir, Rab Yosi, which we didn't go through. We didn't discuss his opinion. We have Rab Yehuda, and Rab Elazar ben Shemua, and Rab Shimon is the last. Miyayish is the acronym. Mem Yud Yud Aleph Shin. Meir, Yosi, Yehuda, Elazar ben Shimon, Elazar ben Shemua, and Rab Shimon ben Yochai. So we're saying that Rab Meir holds like Rabbi Akiva's teacher. What does he say? This Aleph must be the Afla Adam Nami, Leihabi Ktira. Rabbi Akiva holds that even if you harvest for human consumption, it's still not considered harvesting.
Less than a third.
Less than a third, yeah. We're still going with that. The Tanan, yeah, Rashi spells that out. Hamenamer Sadeh. Menamer is like you make it look like a leopard, which means you make blotches of little harvesting pieces in the field. So, which would be that you harvest a row and you leave a row, you harvest a row and you leave a row. So, v'shir by kalachim lachim, and you leave some fresh stalks, which means, I guess, fresh stalks means that they're not fully ripe. So, Rabbi Akiva Eimer peyel kalechad v'echad. Rabbi Akiva says that this is considered dividing the field, and you have to leave a separate payah for each one. V'chachamim eimer me'echad alakal. One payah on the whole field. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. And Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, and Shmuel is the first generation. Leichiv Rabbi Akiva ela benamer lekloyos. Rabbi Akiva said that it's considered separate fields. That's if you took it to turn it into toasted grains, which is for human consumption. But if you harvested it to pile it up in the storage house, then that's considered harvesting already. And if it's harvesting, then it's not dividing the field. But we see that Rabbi Akiva holds that harvesting for human consumption at an early stage is not really considered harvesting, and hence it divides the field. The Gemara asks, Eily, is it really so? Ravin also would travel back and forth. He says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that even if you harvest it to store it, that would mean that even if it's more than a third, it's not considered harvesting. This is a problem because we needed to explain Reb Meir's two opinions there, that it needs to be less than a third. So Reb Meir can't hold like Rabbi Akiva because Rabbi Akiva holds even more than a third is not harvesting. So how would Reb Meir hold that in certain cases you needed to plow it over in order for it not to be harvesting? At any stage it's not harvesting according to Rabbi Akiva, if he holds like Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara answers, famous answer. He agrees with him in one aspect, but he argues on the other aspect. He agrees with him that it's not considered harvesting when it's for human consumption, even though it's for human consumption, but he disagrees with him at what stage of growth it's not considered harvesting. Reb Meir holds that it needs to be less than a third, and Rabbi Akiva holds even if it's more than a third, it's still not considered harvesting.
Why would we think that people can intentionally manipulate the size of their field by cutting down the grass?
No, that would make him give double pay.
No, it wouldn't. Each pays me half the amount.
No, because there has no shear usually.
No, first of all, there is a shear, like Eily said at the beginning. There is a shear, it's just it's not necessarily specified exactly what the shear is. But even so,
usually
you can't intentionally do something to manipulate your mitzvah for whatever that's worth.
He's
So
not doing intentionally.
if there's a valley and a stream, okay, fine, that makes sense. But the guy decides, hey, I'm going to cut the grass, and now all of a sudden I divide my field in half.
Yeah, but he's not doing it for that reason.
How do you know?
He's doing it because they're ripe or they're
How do you know? Since when do we allow people to manipulate their field so that they can give or not give payah?
Yeah. So when there were things that were a concern, so the sages would make a decree.
Right.
This must have been something that wasn't much of a concern. So there was no decree on this. Okay, go knock yourself out. Go
No, but
harvest
now
it in the middle and
it
give
makes it
twice.
important because, like, for example, when you cut your field, you have to make sure you don't cut your field in half. You got to go, let's say, straight through the whole field. If you cut a field, now all of a sudden you're creating a problem.
Right.
If you start in the middle, right, you cut your field in the middle for your harvest. As soon as you make that first plot, now you have two corners. Now you have two fields. You got to make sure you don't do that.
Right.
So you're causing a whole problem by allowing this to be the case.
But it can't be when it's fully ripe, mamish fully ripe, that it's not considered harvesting. It has to be even Rabbi Akiva that says loiter. It can't be
Right,
that
but
it's
that's my point.
100%.
Natural
Rashi
harvesting
says it's a
shouldn't
difficult
affect the
target.
size of the field. That's what people are supposed to be doing.
Yeah. It shows you that you really need to know all of the halachas even just to cut your field down. We had a guy that's coming to convert. So we asked him, do you keep kosher? He says it's not a problem because his grandfather, his mother was in church, his grandfather was a sheikhet in Cuba. And he remembers how he did it, so he's just shechted his own chickens and this. I'm like, no. You can't,
That's the
he
real
remembers
way.
how
That's
he did
the
it.
real way.
I understand,
real
but
way to
you know
do
how many halachas there are. The shecht, a little thing. Even the rabbis have difficulty with this. You can't just say, so here we're talking about cutting a field. It's like, no, you cut it like that. You mess the payas on two sides now. It's all these. Okay. Kaitzin mipnei anatiyas.
So these farmers were big Talmidei Chachamim.
Well, there were details that they would have to know. I guess they would know what's relevant to them. Dami Aretz, there was a problem with them. That's the whole issue of Demai and this. But
And there's a lot of money.
Right.
They must have required a mashgiach tamidi on site.
They would send people around, Kalayim, to check for Kalayim and different things. People would go check. Okay, we said that you're allowed to cut for Netius. We gave two explanations in Rashi. Netius is like trees that are growing. One interpretation was that it would affect the tree, so you were allowed to cut the grain even though it was before the Omer. The other interpretation was that it was going to create Kalayim, because grain in an orchard is Kalayim, so you're allowed to take out the grain. Mipnei Bais, we said if you needed space, the first meal of morning, so the savra they used to do in the outside on the street. If they needed space for everyone to sit, you were allowed to cut over there. Mipnei Bais Medrash, if they needed space for the shear, and they would learn outside, so they were allowed to cut the field even though it was before the Omer. My timer, what's the reason? It says K'tzir Chem Amar Rachmana V'lei K'tzir Mitzvah. It says your harvest. This has to be the first of your harvest, but it's not your harvest. This is the Omer has to be the first of it. This is not your harvest. This is the harvest of the mitzvah. Rashi points out that based on his two pshatim of Netius, this would only be relevant if it was for the Kalayim, because you're cutting it for the mitzvah, not the Iver and Kalayim. But if it's just for the strength of the tree, then the my time is only on the base of Aval and the base of Menachem. You're not supposed to bundle it up, even when you're harvesting it, even when it's permissible to harvest. You're just supposed to leave it. My time, what's the reason? We don't want you to do the whole process. We let you harvest, but then we don't want you to take it further. What's the reason for that? So that it should be recognizable that this is not a real harvest. That's how Rabbi Gershon explains it. To do a shinai. Okay. Mitzvah sa'imer lahavi menakama. The mitzvah is to bring from standing grain. Tanu Rabbanan. It's taught in a Bais. These are always important Bais. Tanu Rabbanan. Reb Shiragain writes that Tanu Rabbanan means that it came from Reb Chia Bais, one of the great collectors of Bais. The pasuk that we're going to quote here is V'im takriv minchas bikurim la Hashem, when you will bring the first mincha to Hashem, aviv, from the right grain, koli baish, it's roasted in fire, geras, caramel, it's crushed. Caramel we said was soft, but probably also means that it was some sort of crushed. Takriv minchas bikurecha. That's how you should bring your minchas bikurim, which is referring to the Omer. Now, if you notice in the pasuk, it says takriv and then takriv. It says v'im takriv, and at the end of the pasuk it says takriv again. You should bring, like it repeats the first phrase a second time. So the Gemara says, the Bais, v'im takriv minchas bikurim. Ma Talmud Laimar. What's it coming to say? The word takriv again. It's both the first part of the pasuk. Rashi explains that it's referring to the question is why should it have to tell me the end of the... No, Rashi explains why does it have to tell me the first part of the pasuk if it says the end of the pasuk? Okay. Because you're supposed to bring it from the standing grain. How do you know that if you didn't find any standing grain that you can bring it from the grain that's bundled? Talmud Leimer takriv. It says in the pasuk takriv an extra time that says it's coming to allow even if it wasn't standing. Davar acher, another interpretation of this extra word, takriv. Lefish mitzvah lahavi menalach. The mitzvah is to bring from the soft grain, the moist. If you can't find any grain that's moist, you can bring from the dry grain. Talmud Leimer takriv. We have the extra pasuk. Davar acher takriv. Another interpretation that says takriv. What is this teaching me? Lefish mitzvah siliktzar balayla. Mitzvah is to harvest it at night. Remember we said that how did we learn that it's supposed to be at night? Tmimais. It needs to be complete. Tmimis tiyana, the days of the sphere need to be complete. If you harvest it at night, then it will be complete by the time it's Shavuos. If you do it in the morning, then it's only it's not 49 days or 50 days. It's only 48 and a half, 49 and a half. So, minayin shem niktzar beyoyim kosher. How do you know that you can harvest that if you b'di'evet, if you harvest it by day, it's okay? Talmud Leimer tak. Oh, I have to leave out that word. Leave out the Talmud Leimer. V'doiches Shabbos, and that it also you can push off Shabbos in order to harvest it. Talmud Leimer takriv. Takriv kol shehu. That means you can bring even if it's bundled. Takriv mikol makom. You can bring even if it's far from Yerushalayim. It's supposed to be from Yerushalayim. Takriv afilu b'Shabbos. You can bring it even on Shabbos. And takriv afilu b'tum. You can bring it even if it's tamei. It becomes tamei. Okay, we're going to discuss niktzar. One statement of this brisa: niktzar b'yoyim kosher. We said, how do we know that if it was cut by day, it's still kosher, and that it pushes off Shabbos? Talmud Leimer takriv. So we're going. The Gemara does to the Mishnah. It takes pieces of the Mishnah and explains it. It also quotes brises and it explains the brises. V'hatanan, but it was taught in our Mishnah. Kol halayla kosher l'ktzir sa'imer l'ekter chalavim ve'ivarim. Sorry, it's not our Mishnah. It's Mishnah in Megillah. Did you do this?
Yeah. Which one is it?
This is. It says the whole night is kosher to cut the omer and to offer the fats. It's daf chaf.
Well, we did have chaf, but I don't remember learning this, so maybe I wasn't there that week.
So, I told you that there was a guy that would give a shiur in the daf Yomi, and they would put their bookmarks there. So one day he decides he's going to see what happens. He puts the bookmarks. He takes the Gemara. He puts the bookmarks all the page before, and he comes in and he starts to teach the Gemara from the day before. And about 20 minutes in, one of the fellows says, "It's amazing. I remember this from 7 years ago."
So he had a lot of cover for his job. He kept quiet for 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we're up to chaf. I think we're up to chaf right now.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, no, I don't remember this Gemara, so I must not have been there that week.
So the Mishnah says that the whole night is kosher for harvesting the omer and for hekter chalavim ve'ivarim, for burning the fats on the altar. Zeh haklal. It continues. It says this is the rule. Something that you're supposed to do the whole day. It's kosher kol hayom, that you have the entire day. Anything that's kosher by day, you have the entire day. Something that the mitzvah is by night to do. Kosher kol halayla. It's permissible the whole night. Now the Gemara is medayek from that Mishnah. Ketani laila dum yidiyim. It gave me two cases. It says that what's permissible by night, what's permissible by day. What's the mitzvah is by night, what the mitzvah is by day. And I would like for it to be symmetrical, because it gave me these two cases that it's exactly the same. So ma diyoim b'layla loy, just as